So this is for our Cuba tour in 2027. It will be February 8th through 13th. We were last in Cuba in end of November, early December 2025, and we're very excited to go back. Chieko, who is here on the call, was the trip host for that and is planning to return as the 2027 trip host. So we can also get all of her thoughts and any questions you have about the trip at the end of this call. So we are very excited about the tour, and this is just a little bit about it. But going into the highlights, we will be spending the full 5 nights, 6 days in Havana at one Casa Particular, which is a boutique kind of B&B style hotel that is allowed for U.S. citizens. But we will be doing one day trip to the Vinales Valley, which we can talk a little bit more about. In detail, but it is a long drive. It's about 3.5 hours each way, but it's a very remote area. There's not a good place for us to stay overnight, which is why we do it as a day trip. But it gives us the chance to see a little bit more about the agricultural side of Cuba, as well as try cigar rolling, and just get to meet and spend some time with some really incredible farmers, and local Cubans. Other highlights are a classic car tour of Havana, as well as our walking tour of Old Havana. And then we take a salsa lesson and salsa class, which should be fun if you're into dancing. And then finally, we also have a cooking class of Cuban food. So, looking at the day-by-day itinerary, February 8th, you will arrive. You can arrive at any time this day. The only activity is our welcome dinner at a local paladar. So there are a few things about traveling as a US citizen to Cuba. We can only stay at privately owned hotels and we can only eat at privately family-owned restaurants. So we get to try some really, really good, authentic local cuisine and smaller, sort of family-run restaurants, and we'll have our welcome dinner this evening. You'll get a private transfer from the airport to our hotel. Then day 2, February 9th, is our guided walking tour of Havana, focused on stopping at some art galleries and seeing a lot of street art as well. And then in the afternoon, we will do our convertible car tour through Havana. So photos, a few women from the December trip starting out that car tour. Then February 10th will be our excursion to Vinales, and this gives us the chance to see the tobacco and sugarcane farm, get our hands dirty, literally rolling some Cuban cigars, and having a home-cooked lunch with the family that owns this farm. And it's just a really beautiful area in Cuba in general. If you're interested, you can do a little horseback ride around the property as well. Then February 11th, we will sleep in because it'll have been a big day before the day before. And then the main activity today is a cooking class over lunch with two female chefs. It's really hands-on. You learn all about cooking Cuban food. And this was definitely a highlight for the women last year. And then in the afternoon, after you eat lunch, you'll have some free time if you want to go back to shop in some of the markets. If you want to go to a beach, we can arrange that. So just flexible free time. Then February 12th, we will again have a leisurely morning. There'll be some free time if you want to go to the beach, go shopping, whatever floats your boat. And then in the afternoon, we will have our salsa dance lesson, followed by a rum tasting and the farewell dinner celebration. Then the 13th, you'll have breakfast and then the private transfer back to the airport for your flights back home. We are staying at a place called La Reserva Havana, which is one of the boutique, like to think of them as sort of like a B&B. You can see the rooms down here. They're very beautiful. It is an older home, and Cuba in general is a place with very limited infrastructure because of the nature of its government. And so while the furniture is beautiful, the beds were comfortable, it is definitely not like a five-star hotel like you might be used to if you've ever been on a WTA trip before or if you've traveled in Europe, etc. The accommodations are clean and safe and comfortable, but they are more basic. And that is just the nature of Cuba. So we do want to just set people's expectations that we really enjoyed the property. Everyone loved it. It's a beautiful, restored old home. But it does have its quirks. Its plumbing is old. There's not an elevator. It is definitely an older building. In terms of the trip price, it is 5,495 in single occupancy. So that's your own private room and bathroom at the Casa Particular. It's all of the guided activities. We have an incredible guide named Paloma who is with us 24/7. And she's incredible as well as our two trip hosts. It's also all of the transportation, the taxes, the tips, the fees, and the itinerary that is specifically designed to align with the allowed US travel regulations of support for the Cuban people. Um, a few other FAQs. So, Americans can still travel to Cuba. It's not traditional tourism, and things are changing. So, this trip is planned. There are women booked on it already. But obviously, if the US administration changes its policy about support for the Cuban people travel, or there is some sort of military action on the ground in Cuba, we would obviously reassess running the trip. But for now, we feel good about returning to Cuba in 2027. The support for the Cuban people category means that we have to make sure that our schedule is full of cultural and educational activities. So we can't just go sit on the beach for 5 days. The whole purpose of this travel is to help us engage with local artisans, entrepreneurs, and the Cuban people themselves. And by providing our hospitality and by being a tourist and spending our US dollars in their economy, it really does make a huge difference for Cuban people. I think Chieko can share a little bit more about her experience hosting the trip at the end of this, but it is incredible the amount of hospitality and warmth that Cuban people have for Americans. It is a generally misunderstood country, I think, by many people, but Cubans want Americans to come. They want to show you their culture. They are really excited for any tourists to be showing up. But life is extremely challenging in Cuba, economically in particular. And so the more that we can go and spend our US dollars in Cuba, we take dollars, we don't take pesos. And, that really does make a direct impact on people's lives in Cuba. So we will also be gathering donations. Those are things like soap, Advil, like really basic things that you probably don't think about people needing in your day-to-day life, but toothpaste makes a huge difference in Cuba because these are all things that are either extremely expensive or impossible to import. And so, as part of participating in the trip, we will gather a list of donations that we recommend, and then everybody can bring some small items in their suitcase for the trip, and we donate them to a local NGO that then helps distribute them to families in need. In terms of visas, there is something called a Cuban tourist visa or a tourist card. These can be pretty easily obtained through once you have your flight purchased. There's a Cuban website, a government website that you can fill out. We provide detailed instructions, and no one on our trip last year had any issues with it. You actually don't need to fill it out until 7 days before you arrive in Cuba. And it's about 30 US dollars for the cost of that. Flights, there are still direct flights from the US, Miami, Houston, Tampa all have direct flights to Havana, could also connect through Mexico. But our recommendation is generally book your flight from, say you live in Atlanta, you could fly Atlanta to Miami and then Miami to Havana. If you just search for flights Atlanta to Havana on like Expedia or Booking, they probably won't show up. For some reason, filters don't work very well on those types of third-party sites. But if you go on an airline like Delta or American and you put in Atlanta to Havana, the flights do show up. So they do exist. They're just a little bit, you have to go direct to the airlines. You can't book them through a third-party site. Weather this time of year is going to be sunny and warm, hot and humid. It's the springtime there. So it will be in the 60s in the lows, 80s at the high. You will need to bring cash USD into Cuba. So there's no banks that, as an American citizen, that you can use, and you can't use your credit cards. So we will provide some guidelines on how much cash, but you'll want to go to an ATM in the US, get your US dollars out, and then bring that with you when you arrive to Cuba. And then finally, we had great Wi-Fi at the hotel, and it was not a problem, but there's not any US phone plan that would work in Cuba. Sometimes when you travel abroad, you can just, keep your normal phone plan. So you have two options. You can either just use Wi-Fi at our accommodations, or you can really disconnect and not do anything, just put your phone on airplane mode. Or we can assist with buying a local SIM card. No one ended up needing that. The Wi-Fi worked very well. And so most people just set expectations with their family and loved ones at home that, they would check in once a day when they were at the hotel. But when we were out and about exploring, know that your phone is not going to be able to connect to cellular data. These are just a few of our photos from last year's trip. So I will
Mm,
pause there and take any questions.
sounds fascinating.
Um, yeah, it was a really incredible trip. Chieko, if you want to just share, I guess, a little bit more about the experience hosting last year and what the highlights were for you, and also just, expectation setting on Cuba in general.
Right. Yeah, I can't get enough of Cuba, and so stop me if I gush for too long. But
Mhm.
I mean, it just started from the very beginning. Our our pickup, the guys, they were like they turned into being almost like brothers to me. I called the one of them was my little brother, and he was like 6'6" and 250, and but they're just so kind, and all they want to do is just make sure that you feel happy. And so we always rode in those 1950s style cars because of the,
Wow.
yeah, always that everywhere we went, that's where we were in. And for so long they just weren't able to import any other vehicles until like the 90s. So they're just always there. They're always waiting, willing to help. And one of the things I love to do is go to grocery stores. And so they were very willing to make little side trips for us if we needed anything. The casa particular, so our Airbnb, so to speak, they were just extremely welcoming. They were right on it. They anything that you asked for. Again, they couldn't do enough to just make sure that we were so happy. And the very first night was when we one of our ladies brought a one of those old, I say old, 15 years ago, a giant suitcase. And it was just filled with like feminine products and the single pack of medicines, the Tylenol and the Motrin and that sort of thing. Band-aids. I mean, like Catherine said, the simplest things. Even now, I'm starting to save the little travel size shampoos and things that I'm getting
Mhm.
because I will throw them in a suitcase. And even if you have to, you would need to check a bag if you did that. But it was, it just brings tears to your eyes to see how appreciative they are of these things that we take for granted. And so it's very moving to be in the country. um, we just ask for these little side trips. Someone's I love cemeteries, and someone else in the car on our convertible ride day. Oh, look, can we see a cemetery? What's that like? And so they made a detour and they took us through the cemeteries, and it was kind of a closed situation, so they had to stop and ask a little bit of permission. And again, above and beyond. Now you're going to see some poverty there. That's the reality of it. But it, that exists everywhere, right? And so again, just to know how appreciative they are of us. The street art is amazing. And Catherine, talking about bringing cash, sometimes that creates a little bit of anxiety with people. there is zero concern for carrying cash. We used our safes in the hotel for excess. You just bring what you want. The hosts generally will have some extra if on a particular day you're like, oh, there's this piece of art and it's going to cost me $50. Okay, so we work it out, but I just want to assure you that carrying cash, it's not any scarier there than it is in Paris or London. It's no big deal. And Paloma is right on it. She's very helpful. One of the most endearing things about her, if someone was trying to ask for money in our group, Paloma, she would call them like Cara, right? Darling, I'm working. Please let me work. And so it was just a gentle way that she's treating her own people. Hey, look, I'm working right now, so please just so she just was helpful in that way. If anyone is uncomfortable with situations like that, everything just stays very well controlled, monitored. We're always watching. There are the two trip hosts as well as Paloma. So
Paloma. Yeah.
your group is kind of surrounded by caring individuals, and so it's stunning. Everything about it is perfect. The food, the trip to Viñales, that farm, it's eye-opening to see how hard they work and how they interact with their government to keep things rolling. So extremely interesting culture. I just again, like I said, I cannot say enough about it. So any
What what
any
language do they
questions?
speak there?
Spanish. So they most like everyone on the street day to day, they'll speak Spanish together. Our guides speak English.
Mhm.
And certain people who are working in the hospitality sector, the drivers, the people at our cost particular, they speak decent English enough that they can help you with everything that you need. But the main language that everyone speaks together is Spanish.
And is it a barter type culture, or like when you're buying like the art you were mentioning, is it barter or is it more of this is the price and it's respectful?
You mean like haggling,
Yeah,
bartering,
Yeah, like in
and
some cultures it's like
they
yeah,
expect you to,
bargaining. Yeah,
yeah,
from my travels, like in some cultures you kind of have to do
have
that.
to. Yeah.
yeah.
So is it like that there, or is it more of just like it is
The,
here where the price is the point?
on the street, it is it's haggling, right?
Okay.
And so if you're into that sort of thing, and one of the ladies, I loved um her approach to it. Carla was like, I'm not going to try to get the price down if it's within reason. I'll just say, oh, you want $20? Well, okay, can I have this little magnet as well? Oh, and can I just have this little cloth bag?
Right.
And so just add a little more to it, so you don't have to give them less money, but you just get a couple more items
Right.
in the bag. And so I thought
Okay.
that was a brilliant idea because I do not like negotiating prices at
Mhm.
all.
Uh,
Yeah, makes sense. So, a question about if there's a medical emergency and like lack of having a credit card and all that, like
yep.
what does that situation look like for somebody?
So, we know what it looks like because a woman sprained her ankle on the trip and she went to the hospital. It was definitely not a life or death emergency, but as part of the Cuban visa process, you actually pay as part of your airline ticket for your medical insurance while in Cuba. So all of it's a socialized medicine government system, so your healthcare is free. But in order to provide healthcare to non-citizens, they require that every tourist pay a small additional fee for basically health coverage while in Cuba. You'll see that if you buy an airline ticket from American, say, there'll be something that calls it like the Cuban health fee, and it's about a $70 extra charge included in that airline ticket. And if you need to go to the hospital, you bring your airline ticket. So that's one thing we remind everybody, like either have a screenshot on your phone or make sure you still have proof of your ticket, because you would need to show that at the hospital or to the doctor for them to provide you medical care. The medical care in Cuba is it's actually quite good. Cuban doctors don't come to the US, but there are Cuban doctors who've gone all over the world to study. So the healthcare system in Cuba is actually one of the things that they do right. Um, the woman who sprained her ankle, she went to the doctor, she got x-rays. They, helped make sure that there wasn't anything worse than a mild sprain, and she was able to fully participate. But there is a very good hospital. The doctors, we had Paloma there to help us translate, but they do speak some English. And you just need your airline ticket in order to get healthcare coverage. We always recommend as well, to get travel insurance. So that would cover the trip as well. That'd be third-party travel insurance. And there are a couple companies, not every travel insurance company covers Cuba, but there are three companies that we recommend that do regularly travel or cover travel to Cuba. And that would give you a secondary layer of like if you were really sick and you needed to get medevaced out of Cuba, that would kind of kick in to cover the costs of getting you a special plane to take you back to the US. But luckily, knock on wood, we've done literally 30 trips a year for more than a decade and never had anyone get sick enough that they need that sort of support.
Okay, so there are some insurance travel
Yeah,
companies that
there's
will go
yeah.
into
So we would always
Cuba.
recommend the travel insurance plus you'll have the built-in Cuban healthcare coverage through your
Okay.
airline ticket.
Okay. And then culturally, is there a military presence? Like in Africa, like I've got when I get off the plane in Africa, there's like armed military in the airports. Like, is it like that there, or is it more like here?
There is some, but it wasn't overwhelming at all. And I don't think anything of it because I'm doing my thing. I'm in, I'm out. There was no issue with customs or immigration or any of that on either end when I came back through Miami, and I didn't even pause at customs. So anyway, but as far as the military presence there, it is around, but it's they're not people that you want to talk to. They're doing their job. So
Right.
it
Um,
wasn't intimidating.
Yeah, I think my experience, if I compare like Egypt or Morocco, where it felt very militarized in many ways, or there, on the street corner, there were a lot of people in military garb with AK-47s.
Mhm.
I did not experience that when I was in Cuba. There's definitely local security forces, and police officers, but it felt less militarized than certain, I'd say, Arab or African countries do, where there is a very public presence of not just police officers, but military people. But I think Chieko and I both had very positive, that it is a country that most people just kind of leave you alone. Like I think they're very excited and interested to see tourists and Americans and hear English, but again, it's not culturally, it's not as like a place like India where people are really in your face all of the time. There's a little bit more respect for personal space and respect for they may ask for, a for money or a donation, but if you say no, they're not going to chase you down the street sort of
Mm.
culture.
Okay. And then I'm assuming that in place like Cuba, they don't have guns like we do here in the US. So
No.
gun violence isn't a thing.
Gun
Okay.
violence is definitely not a thing. It's very heavily like there are no uh you are not as a Cuban citizen, you are not allowed to have a gun. So that's very strictly policed and controlled. And crime in Cuba is actually extremely low. So while there is definitely a lot of poverty, there's not a lot of crime in the way that certain countries do struggle with like petty theft and crime and things like that because of poverty, because of the nature of Cuba's government being very controlling. There's like next to no property crime or petty theft or things like that. So it's a very safe country to visit.
Okay.
Yeah. No drugs
Yeah.
either that you So you go to Puerto Rico or Jamaica and you're going to walk down the street and get a contact high. There is zero
Yeah.
tolerance.
That happens here in Austin too.
Yeah. So it is, yeah, and I guess the only other thing I'll mention in case it's important, to people in Cuba, there are certain things that as Americans we can't bring out of Cuba officially. We go off of the official guidance. Chieko can tell you her experience on a personal level, but officially you're not supposed to import, you can't bring back with you cigars or Cuban rum, because of the export import regulations that the US government has against Cuba. That being said, people do it, and
Yeah.
we had 12 women come back from Cuba, and I don't think a single one of them got even stopped at customs to ask if they had anything.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit of a don't ask, don't tell policy for the US, but the official guidance is that if you are going to buy a cigar or something in Cuba, or you're going to buy some rum, the official policy is you cannot bring it back with you to the US, or they would confiscate it at customs. But again,
Mhm.
our policy is don't ask, don't tell when it comes to those sorts of things. If you want to bring them back, we're not going to say that you can't. We just do like to say that there are restrictions coming back to the US about what you can and can't bring in officially.
And the worst thing that happens is they
They
confiscate.
take it, yeah. So, like we
Not
said,
like Canada. If you get caught with it in Canada, they'll take it.
yeah, same Australia, New Zealand, right? Like
Yes,
I
yes.
I got a bunch of cookies and some crocodile jerky taken from me in Australia, and I was pretty sad, but it wasn't the end of the world.
Right.
So, yeah, not a huge deal. Like we said, we had zero issues with customs getting back into the US just in December. Any other questions? Hmm.
Will you be publishing or providing us with a list of the types of things that you're looking for us to bring?
Yeah, donations. So we
Yeah, the
send that
donation.
list about 4 months in advance. We'll
Okay.
send a list of recommended donations, and
Right.
then it's kind of up to you what luggage space you have. I think the more you can bring, the more the merrier. But again, if
Mhm.
you if it's just a couple bottles of shampoo, that's also totally fine. The other thing that does make a really big difference, and that especially the staff at the Casa Particular, like some of the women left behind a half-used bottle of shampoo, or they left behind a half-used bottle of toothpaste. Like even that is things that
Mhm.
people want. So if you do say check a suitcase and you bring like full-size shampoo and toiletries and things, you can always leave those in Cuba. It's not like they have to be unopened. Anything is helpful and people really appreciate it. So clothing also, if
I was
had a
going to ask
box of
about that. Yeah.
clothes that were going to go to Goodwill, they will happily accept. Truly, anything goes a long way because people have access to nothing new.
Mhm. Yeah, we
Yeah,
did that in India. I remember leaving. We left, in fact, I think, yeah, we left a lot of clothing in
Yeah.
India just because they have so little in the areas where we were, they have so little and and yeah, they were thrilled. So yeah.
How many people go on this trip?
Yeah, so the minimum is four. We have 3 women registered right now, and then the maximum will be 10. So we're fully expecting to reach probably close to 8 to 10 women. We had 10 women in 2025. And if it means anything, we have one woman, Carla, actually, who loved Cuba so much, she's going back a year and a half later. So this
Mhm.
truly is a trip that people raved about, and I think was really meaningful, as well, just and very eye-opening. So yeah, one of the people who are already registered is a repeat traveler who's going back to Cuba.
Mhm.
That's cool.
Mhm.
What time of the day do the days start? Like what time is breakfast and all that?
Most days will like breakfast will start around 7 and go until 9. Typically, you can we have the whole hotel cost particular to ourselves, so you can eat when you
Oh,
want. Um, but typically our activities will start no earlier than 9, with the exception of the day that we go to Vinales when we'll be on the road by like 7:45, 8 a.m., just because it's a long day. But the rest of the days will start probably between 9 and 10. And on a few of the days, like the cooking class, we won't even start until 11 a.m. So if you're an not an early riser, other than the Vinales day, there's no up at sunrise sorts of days.
Okay, cool. I was gonna ask one more thing. Oh, are all the rooms single occupancy?
Yes, all the rooms are
Okay.
single occupancy and they all have their own private bathroom attached. So no sharing rooms or bathrooms. We do have the option if someone wanted to bring like a friend or you wanted to travel with somebody, we can arrange two twin beds in a room and you can share, but the price is based on everybody getting their own room, which is the standard for all of our trips.
Okay. And then water, is the water clean to drink?
We provide bottled water, and then there's filtered water stations in the hotel as well. So the tap water is fine to like brush your teeth or take a shower, but we provide bottled water for all of your drinking.
So there's access to bottled water
Yes.
there.
Yeah, we make sure you have access. Like during the tour days out and about, we'll make sure that you always have access to bottled water.
How do they get that in?
So they can import things, just not from the US. And so a lot of what they bring in comes from Latin America. And like
Oh.
someone in Latin America could buy Pampers, diapers, for example, and then import them to Cuba. Once it's out of the US, it doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
But the bigger issue for Cubans is the exchange rate is so bad that a diaper in the US might cost like $1 per diaper. In Cuba, that would be someone spending like an entire week's salary on a single diaper.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and so while they can get things, it's just really expensive for the average Cuban.
Mhm.
So that's kind of why the US dollar goes very far there is are what a dollar, the value of a dollar to us is very different than the value of a dollar to an average Cuban. So we can afford in Cuba to drink bottled water and to buy Coca-Colas and all of, the luxuries
Mhm.
that the average Cuban would have to save and work very hard to be able to afford. But Cubans drink, the tap water is safe to drink. They do actually have pretty good sanitation. We just prefer for everybody to drink bottled water because we think that it's better safe than sorry. But
Mhm.
the
Well, you
average
never know
Cuban
what the
drinks tap
bacteria,
water.
so it could be like good for their gut, the bacteria.
Yeah,
But
exactly. I think it's one of those things like I
yeah,
lived in Morocco for 3 years, and by the end of my time there, I drank the tap water.
yeah,
Most people in Morocco don't drink the tap water when they're visiting because it takes a while to get used to those
Right.
things. Like the
yeah,
chemical
Mhm.
softeners, all of those things are different. So we always
yeah.
just say
There's
bottled
just
water
not
is
enough time
safer.
in 5 days to
Yeah,
acclimate to new
exactly.
bacteria.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we provide
Our
bottled water.
bodies don't like new germs.
No. And the last thing we want is, yeah, someone getting sick from something that was avoidable. So bottled water is much easier.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So they use, what kind of money do they use? It's not USD, is it?
So there's kind of two markets. The private market in Cuba does use US dollars, which is why we bring dollars and can use dollars. The official government market for everything uses Cuban pesos, which is the local currency. But again, their economy, like one day the value might be X, the next day it's Y, it's then back to X. It's all over the place.
Oh, it's
So
really volatile
it's
like
very
that?
volatile.
Mhm.
So
Do they have
rather
a, they don't
than
have like a stock market or anything.
no.
No. Interesting.
And
Okay.
so most people in Cuba prefer actually to have US dollars, which is why when you're bartering
They're
for
worth more,
art
right?
or whatever, yes, they would much rather you pay them in US dollars. And so we recommend just bringing like going to your bank if you take out, $200 or $300, don't bring $100 bills because those are going to be hard to get
Right.
change for. But if you can go and ask them to give you ones and fives and tens, that makes it really easy to then haggle for something that's, $12. You can just pay them $12 instead of having to get change, which is where they don't always have change.
Oh, right. So how much money does someone bring on this trip? How much cash?
We, I would say it depends on if you're a big shopper or like if you want little souvenirs or if you want a lot of art. Cuba has amazing art. or if you're someone who, wants a bunch of cigars. But I would say in general, I think we recommended last year for women to bring anywhere from $200 to $500, depending on their shopping preferences. I would say it's better to err on the side of bringing more because you can always bring the dollars back to the US and they still work. So my opinion is I'd rather bring $500 and only spend 250 of it and just bring the other cash home with me. That way you're not worried about, oh, I have to budget for my shopping.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 500 is not that much at all.
No,
Thinking about what I've
again,
spent on things
yeah.
traveling in the past.
The
Yeah.
really, I think most of the women who bought, really beautiful pieces of art, bags, clothing, jewelry, like all of that was anywhere from five to the expensive things might have been like 45 or $50. So,
So it's kind of
um,
like going to Mexico and shopping.
yes, yeah, very similar price ranges for sure.
Mm.
Okay. And then, so can Cuban people leave Cuba to go on vacation? Can they visit the US?
To the US, no.
No, but they can
Well,
go like to other
they can
countries.
go to other countries. It's changed a lot. The past administrations, it was a bit more flexible where Cubans who had, if you were a Cuban citizen and your mom, brother, family member lived in the US, you could get a temporary visa to come visit your family in the US. That doesn't exist currently,
Yeah.
but it might exist again in the future. Cubans can go to a lot of other countries, especially Latin American and African countries and Asian countries they can go to.
Mhm.
And there are rich Cubans. Like there's definitely two classes of Cuba. It's just that the majority of people are not wealthy enough to go on vacation or afford a lot of basic necessities. But of course, there
Yeah.
are plenty of very wealthy Cubans who can afford all of those things. And the neighborhood we stay in is one of those neighborhoods where like it's the very wealthy elite neighborhood of Havana, so it's extremely safe and it's very beautiful. And the people who are the business people and the most successful Cubans live in that part of Havana.
Mm.
So it's a little bit like Africa where you've got the royalty and then
Yes.
subsistence living. There's no middle class.
No, not really.
No.
Unfortunately not. Yeah.
Interesting. And so how do these rich Cubans make their money? Is it family money from,
Yeah, import
or is it
my
corrupt money? Is it like corruption?
yes.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
a lot of it is government, the people who are government officials or are associated with the government are going to be very rich. Likewise, I think there's a certain amount of like import export businesses, right? If you're the person who owns the boat that can bring in all of these imported goods from Latin America or Asia,
All right.
and resell them, you can make a certainly a much better living than a Cuban person who works for, driving a taxi or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
But yes, if you've been to
Interesting.
places that have huge wealth disparities, Cuba is that experience. It's like the
Mhm.
India or Kenya or Nigeria or many of the other
They-
African countries where there is an elite and then there's everybody
yeah.
else.
Yeah. Tanzania comes to mind.
Yes, yeah,
Rwanda.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I don't know. Brazil is very much like that. I don't know about the
yeah,
rest of South America, but Brazil was very much like that.
Oh, is
yes.
it?
Um,
Brazil.
so well, what I'll do is send a recording of this as well as the information on the trip and how to register. If you haven't
Mhm.
registered for a trip before, the process is on the website. You pay a $400 deposit. Did I go through this already? I don't know if I'm repeating myself. But then you pay in
No, you
monthly
did.
installments leading up to the trip, with the
Mm.
balance payment being due um, 90 days before we travel. So since this starts in February, the balance payment would be due in November. And until then, you can break it up into monthly installments. We always have a 90-day and a 30-day pre-trip call, which you get on Zoom like this with your trip host, me, the staff, and we go over everything to expect for Cuba, what to pack, all of the information that you're going to need. And it's a chance for you to meet the other women that you're traveling with as well. And then we have a WhatsApp group that we use to communicate before the trip, as well as on the ground. That's just you and the other women going on your trip.
Excellent.
Um, what's the cancellation policy?
Yeah. So, well, if we have to cancel the trip for some reason, you get 100% of your money back. I'll start there. Um, we don't expect to, but with Cuba, I don't know 100%. So if we cancel it, you get 100% money back. If you cancel the spot on the trip, it depends how far out from the trip we are. If you're more than 6 months before the trip, then you get a 50% refund. If it's after the 6 month mark, then everything you've paid up to that point is non-refundable. And that's why travel insurance is really important because if you get sick 10 days before you land in Cuba or something and need to cancel, unfortunately, we're not able to offer a refund, but we can help you with all of the paperwork for travel insurance so that you can get a full reimbursement.
So what are the names of the travel insurance that cover Cuba? Because
Yes,
I like to buy the cancel for any reason.
reason. Yep.
And you have to buy that before you even pay for your trip, right?
Most policies have a 10-day window. So as long as you buy it within 10 days of making the deposit on the trip, the cancel for any reason will work. Um, I know off the top of my head that Allianz, Allianz, has a Cuba policy. I have in my email from our last trip the names of like three other companies. So in the recap email, I can send you the names of those other companies as well if you want to like look at what the cost of
Mhm.
travel insurance would be.
Yeah, that
Okay,
would be
that'd be
helpful.
great.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, it was nice to meet you. Have a good rest of your night. And if you have more
Yeah,
questions, just let us
Yeah.
know, but you'll get a follow-up email from me.
all
Thank
right, thank
you.
All
you. Thanks
right.
for your time.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye, Chica.
Bye.
Bye,
Good to
nice to
see
meet
you.
you guys.
Bye bye.
Mhm. Bye.